The first step is to find the center of our board. You can use a ruler like this and connect the corners, or you can measure the diagonal, or you can measure, this is 15 inches wide, half of 15 is 7.5, and it's 7 inches wide, half of 7 is 3.5. Make a mark, an X right there. That's gonna be our origin point. When we come back to the router, we gotta make sure that it's plugged in. We'll follow the power cord from back here, plug it into the wall over here. We also are gonna and then there's a switch in the very back right here that I could turn on. And sometimes if it won't turn on, the emergency stop has been pushed. So it's a twist lock. So we just have to twist it, it'll pop out and turn on. Once we get it to here, we could go ahead and plug in our USB drive. It's the USB drive that has my .tap files on it. And that just goes right into the side here. And then I hit continue. This is just the startup screen. So we're gonna be very careful. You gotta agree to that. And now this is the screen that we'll be using mostly. The other thing we wanna make sure of is that we have the right router bits. Now these are the 3 router bits that you had the choice of: the 1/4 inch bit, the V bit, and the 1/8 inch bit. For me, I'm gonna wind up using just the 1/4 inch bit, or I'm sorry, the 1/8 inch bit and the V bit, and I'm gonna load the V bit in first. So right now the bit is hand tight in there. So I could slide it in, and try not to drop it. But I slide it into the collet, and I could push this red button right here, and I could twist to get this to tighten. And when I push that red button, it's the spindle lock. If I'm not pushing the red button in, it spins freely. But if I push it in, it'll come to a spot where it locks. And then I can take a wrench and give it the final tighten. The wrench should just be sitting. I've got a crescent wrench. There's also a wrench that looks like this one that's a little bit bigger that you can use to change the bit as well. Our next step is to clamp down the board. As you can see, we got clamps in the corners of the board. Make sure it's good and firm, and also make sure that those clamps aren't going to get in the way of the router bit. Don't put clamps near the center of the board. Keep them off towards the corner, and I like to do them diagonal, so we're sure to hold down all the corners of the board. And then give the board a good wiggle before you go cut anything out, so it's not coming loose, because if it comes loose, you almost always have to restart. My next step is to use the control pad here to move the router so that it's directly over the X. That's kind of hard to see, but I'm gonna try to do this together. So when I hit the near Y, you'll see it move. Double check that this is set at medium instead of fast. Fast sometimes move too fast and we can stab our board. So I'm gonna use the near Y to get it close to my mark. I gotta move to the right X a little bit. And then I gotta bring it down so it's just barely touching the board. Okay, so I've used the control panel here to move that. So now hopefully you can see that we're right on the X. Now I need to zero this out. So I'm gonna use the 0 XYZ button. Say okay. Now we can see it's all zeros, and that's the origin for my router. Next we're gonna do is hit this USB button right here. And I am KSV bit for my first cut. So I load KSV bit. This gives me some detailed information. It says that my X is 15, my Y is 7. It's the first lines of code. If you want to read them all, you can read them all. We hit next. Don't use virtual 0. And then I like to put the speed down at about 60% and say start. And that should start my file. So we just got done cutting out the Trojans, and we need to do a bit change. So I'm gonna change to the 1/8 inch bit, doing the same process that we did before. Making sure that you push the red button to lock the collar and use the wrench to change the bit out. So I ran into a problem. I need to bring the router up to get the bit out. So I just come back over here to the control panel. I'll hit the X button, exit, exit, exit. Then I'm gonna go up Z. And when I hit the Z up, that moves it up far enough to put the new bit. So our XY is still at 0, but we need to get XY Z back at 0 because the Z has changed with the new bit. So you can see I'm using the Z button, and I'm gonna bring that back down until it's touching. And you'll notice that it says 0.071 because it's a different height than the old bit. So now I'm gonna say 0 again, changing the axis, and same process now, but I'm doing the 1.5 bit. Next, don't use virtual 0, and start.